All right, chemistry students, I'm going to go over some examples here for our worksheet, simple naming Roman numerals. These are for naming ionic compounds that have a cation as a transition metal as a cation. So the transition metals can have numerous charges, and we're going to go over students practicing on how to write the names of these ionic compounds that have a transition metal in it. So the first here question talks about what Roman numerals do we use with transition metals with the following charges. So if your transition metal has a +1 charge, we will use a Roman numeral 1. For a +2 charge, we will use a Roman numeral 2, and these will be in parentheses. For a +3 charge, we will use a Roman numeral 3 in parentheses, and for a +4 charge, we use a Roman numeral 4, which is IV. Okay, let's do a couple examples just as a review. Our first one here, we have copper combining together with bromine, and we're safe always to start out with our anion, okay, because the anion is not going to have multiple charges here. In this case, we have our first one, we have our copper and bromine. Our anion is bromine, and bromine is atomic number 35. It is in a group 17, which has a negative. All group 17 ions are -1, and we would write that as bromide. Bromide. Remember, we changed our ending from bromine, we change it to bromide. Okay, and since it has a -1 charge, go back to our formula here, CuBr. If the bromine has a -1, that tells us that copper has a -1 or +1, because there aren't any subscripts. There are no subscript numbers for the copper and the bromine, so that tells us we have a +1 charge, and we would write that as copper. And since it's a transition metal, copper 1 bromide. Okay, copper is in group number 11, which is a transition. Remember, your transition metals are all the metals from group number 3 all the way over to the semimetals or metalloids, which are in a step line from group number 13, 14, 15. Okay. The next one here is also made of copper and bromine, but we have a different formula now that bromine has a subscript 2. Okay, we already know that bromine has a -1 charge, and it's going to be bromide. Okay. But how do we know what copper has now? Well, remember what we're doing, where we got these subscripts from, this number two, this subscript 2 for bromine. Remember, this is like to call this just using the reverse crisscross method, because that 2 for bromine subscript came from the copper. Okay, so there was a 2 there, and the 1 subscript came from there. So we just reverse those, okay, and it tells us that copper is a +2. Okay, like we already know that bromine's always a -1. So this is a +2, and that makes the name copper Roman numeral 2. Copper 2 bromide. Okay, let's do one more. And we have iron and oxygen. And again, we always want to start with the anion. In this case, oxygen, atomic number 8, is in group number 16. Group number 16, always these group 16 elements are a -2 ion. Okay, and this is oxide. So we change it from oxygen to oxide. Okay, now this is kind of a unique one because We don't have a subscript here for oxygen or iron in this ionic compound, but we know that oxygen is a -2. Okay, excuse me, I should put that up on top. Okay, we know that oxygen is a -2 charge. Okay, so since there's no subscripts on the bottom, we know that iron must be a +2. And what happened? Well, you know the rules from using the crisscross and writing correct ionic compound formulas. The charges are reduced whenever possible. So that's what happened here. We don't have any subscript numbers on the bottom here because they canceled, the +2 and the -2 canceled each other out. So how does that work? We have a +2, and we call that iron 2, iron 2 oxide. Okay, so I hope that helps you out. A few examples there. You've got, looks like only 5 of them left to do. Good luck on this. Ask questions if you need help.